Inside a crack no wider than a book, the rock collapsed. It crushed his entire body. Every rescue attempt failed. The cave entrance shook, then collapsed completely. In one final effort, the rescue team dug a new tunnel. Their hope? Pull him out of the living rock tomb. For 12 days, they carved through solid earth, until they finally reached the spot where he was trapped. But what they found left all of America in silence. This is the true story of the Floyd Collins incident. 1925, Kentucky, USA. Floyd Collins, 38 years old. A seasoned explorer, he had been crawling through caves since the age of 6. Floyd discovered Sand Cave, a limestone tunnel, narrow and twisted like a maze, surrounded by cold mud, slick walls, and total darkness. For weeks, he worked to widen the entrance, chasing one dream: turn it into a tourist site, make money, change his life. Friday, January 30th, Floyd went back in alone, carrying an oil lamp and a few supplies. He crawled more than 100 feet in, reaching a chamber called Turnaround. Ahead was a 25-foot squeeze, barely 9 inches high. Rough, pitch black, painfully tight, he had to lie flat, facing up, arms bent across his chest just to slide through. Floyd lowered a rope down a deeper crack, into a massive chamber no one had ever seen before. High ceiling, glittering rock, wide, open space. Floyd smiled. In his mind, he could already see the tourists, lining up to buy tickets. But then, his oil lamp began to flicker. Floyd had to turn back. He climbed quickly through the crack, but ahead was the squeeze, the death tunnel. Lying on his back, he pushed with his feet, sliding forward inch by inch. The lamp rolled ahead of him, scraping over sharp, uneven stone. Crash. The lamp tipped. The flame went out. Darkness swallowed him. Floyd held his breath. Cold sweat slid down his cheek. He felt his way through the rocks, every surface unfamiliar, every crevice tighter than the last. Total silence. No one knew it yet, but that moment was the beginning of the longest nightmare of his life. A boulder, about 35 pounds, dropped straight down. It pinned his left leg. His body went stiff. He couldn't move. The space tightened around him. The darkness grew heavier and colder. Floyd clawed at the dirt, digging at the rocks around his leg. But the more he dug, the more debris fell in, tightening the trap. He shouted, he screamed, hoping someone, anyone, would hear him. But the sound only echoed, bounced off the cave walls, then disappeared. The harder he tried, the faster he drained. He stopped, tried to breathe deep, tried to stay calm. Floyd knew escape on his own was impossible. Now, all he could do was wait for a miracle. But the real question was, would anyone find him before it was too late? The next morning, more than 24 hours had passed since Floyd got trapped. Jewel Estes, a neighbor boy, noticed something strange. Floyd's coat and gear were still outside the cave, but Floyd was nowhere in sight. Something felt wrong. Jewel crawled in. At the turnaround chamber, he stopped. He heard it, a faint voice, a weak cry for help echoing up from the darkness. He called out. Floyd, exhausted and starving, exhaled in relief. Someone had finally found him. Jewel didn't waste a second. He crawled out fast, ran for help. Within hours, Floyd's family and neighbors gathered at the cave, worried, afraid, and hoping it wasn't already too late. 4 p.m. Homer arrived, Floyd's younger brother. Small, fearless. They had explored caves together since they were kids. Without hesitation, Homer crawled in. He brought coffee, a sausage, anything to keep his brother alive. He slid forward, inch by inch, using only his toes. His stomach scraped against the cold stone as he forced himself through the squeeze. At last, he reached Floyd. Floyd broke down in tears. Homer handed him the coffee and food. For the first time in days, Floyd had hope. But the tunnel was so tight, Homer couldn't even lean down properly. So, he started digging, stone by stone, fistfuls of dirt. 16 straight hours. His hands were torn open, his legs bleeding. But he didn't stop. Every time he cleared space, more rocks fell in, tightening the trap. Finally, Homer collapsed. 8 a.m., February 7th. He dragged himself out, barely able to stand, and cried. He knew the truth. He couldn't save Floyd alone. So now the question was, who would be brave enough to take his place? News of Floyd's entrapment spread fast. Within days, nearly 10,000 people gathered at Sand Cave. They set up tents, lit campfires, sold food like it was a festival. But underground, Floyd had only darkness and shallow breaths. February 2nd, the afternoon. William Skeets Miller arrived, a reporter from the Courier-Journal. He weighed just 117 pounds, small enough to squeeze into the narrow section that scared everyone else. Miller crawled in. What he saw stopped him cold. Floyd was shivering, gaunt, barely holding on. His mind was slipping. Miller talked to him, kept him awake, tried to keep him sane. Then, he and the rescue team came up with an idea. They hung a tiny light bulb around Floyd's neck. It gave off warmth, and more importantly, it was a signal. The wire ran out of the cave. Every time Floyd breathed, the bulb outside flickered. People called it Floyd's last heartbeat, but the clock was ticking, and time was running out. Morning of February 4th, the entrance began to shake. Pebbles started falling. Then, boom, a full collapse. The squeeze was sealed shut. Panic broke out above ground. No one dared go back in, except one, Johnny Gerald, an old friend of Floyd's. He refused to give up. Alone, he crawled in and began digging through the collapse. The tunnel was tight, the air thin. Rocks kept falling, but Johnny kept going. Eventually, he broke through. He became the last person to ever reach Floyd. Johnny tried clearing more stone, but the massive boulder trapping Floyd wouldn't budge. After 8 hours, the walls began to shake again. Johnny knew if he stayed, he'd be buried too. Shaking, crying, he crawled out, and just minutes later, the cave collapsed again. Floyd was left alone, in the dark, in the cold, and in silence. Was there any way left to bring Floyd back into the light? February 5th, the governor of Kentucky gave the order: drill a rescue shaft beside the cave. Everyone believed this was the last chance. The plan: dig straight down 55 feet, then cut sideways into the tunnel. Estimated time, 30 hours. The digging began, but heavy rain hit. The soil turned to sludge. The limestone was soft, collapsing again and again. Machines broke down. Volunteers collapsed from exhaustion. The 30-hour plan was impossible. And below, Floyd was still there, alone, a flickering bulb around his neck, barely glowing, his last heartbeat blinking in the dark. Then, the night of February 13th, the light at the cave entrance went out. Everyone froze. No one said a word, but they all knew. Something was wrong. Still, they waited, hoping for a miracle. February 16th, after 12 days of digging, they finally reached Floyd. But there was no miracle. He had died 3 days earlier. 14 days, trapped, exhausted, starving, frozen. All of America went silent. Floyd was brought out and buried at his family farm. Later, when the cave became part of a national park, he was moved to a cemetery near Mammoth Cave. Floyd became a symbol of hope and a brutal reminder. His story spread across the country, on front pages, over radio stations, into books, movies, and songs. A tragedy that haunted a nation and a lesson carved in stone. Check the terrain, prepare for the worst, and never go in alone. But above all, Floyd is remembered for his spirit, unbreakable, even at the edge of death. So now ask yourself, if you were trapped, facing the end, would you stay calm? Would you fight like Floyd? Let us know in the comments.